Dr. Andrew Grecki here. When we first rolled out RTM, I was focused almost entirely on the practice side of things, like the billing, the workflow, are we compliant? I was not prepared for what patients would say about it. And I think maybe because honestly, I thought patients would tolerate it. Maybe the use the app occasionally, maybe not. But what actually happened, it kind of blew my mind. It changed how I think about the program entirely. And so today I want to share some of that feedback from this experience we've had over the past 3.5, 4 years doing this, because I think it's going to shift how you see RTM. It's not it's not as a billing mechanism, as a clinical upgrade, right? And so almost universally, the first thing that patients say about RTM is some version of I finally knew what I was supposed to be doing at home, right? Think about how often this happens in your practice, right? Patients come in, they had a great session, you show them the exercises, you explain exactly how to do them, they nod along, they go home. 3 days later, they can't quite remember. You've asked them to do it, and they show you, and it doesn't even look close to what you showed them, right? Was it 3 sets? Was it two? Was this foot in front? Was this foot in front? Was I supposed to bend my knee? How far, right? Which exercise comes first? All these questions that happen. So what happens when they're not with you is they either guess, and maybe sometimes they do it wrong, or maybe they skip it because they're just not sure, they're not confident. In that cycle, if multiplied across like your entire caseload, is one of the biggest sources of slow progress, patient dropouts, no-shows and cancels in an outpatient PT practice. RTM really breaks that cycle. The exercises or the home treatments are in the app, on their phone, with video, with specific instructions, right? Available whenever the patient needs them. Even has reminders that go out to them to perform daily. One patient told us, I watched my videos every single day, right? And I could actually see that on my end. You did. I actually knew what I was doing for once, right? That's not a small thing, right? That's the difference between a patient who completes their plan of care and a patient who drops out, a week or two into it, right? Which happens to about 70% of the patients that we see across the country. They drop out early. Not great, right? We need to work on that. That's not great. The feedback really that surprised me most wasn't the app. It wasn't about connection. We had a patient, and this is a patient who was not particularly engaged at the start of care. They were very skeptical. They even said they were skeptical. They've tried everything, right? They were just going through the motions. And her family member actually reached out to us after she finished her full plan of care and met her goals and had a great experience. And they said, she would have quit without the support, right? She would have quit without the support. She told me she didn't like that she was doing it alone. She didn't feel confident, and that really hit me. That made me realize that this really fixes a much bigger problem than we even realized. Because that's the thing we can't measure in a billing report, right? The patient who almost dropped out but didn't, that's not measurable, right? The patient who didn't feel abandoned between appointments, right? The patient who felt like someone was actually paying attention to them and who was needing them to do something to help themselves, right? RTM creates that continuity of care that visits alone can't provide, and patients feel that. Another patient told one of our providers that this is the first time I've ever actually finished a physical therapy program. She'd been to PT twice before and had stopped early both times. That's crazy. That's amazing. And she finished this time, right? Because the check-ins kept her accountable. They kept her engaged. She felt like we cared what she was doing. She wasn't just a number in a mill, right? Because when she had questions, she got the answers. She sent messages. People engaged with her because she didn't feel like, she was on her own. She felt like she was getting high value for the time, money, and energy she was spending to come to the clinic. And here's why that matters beyond the warm feeling, right? When patients actually complete their plan of care, they get better outcomes, right? That's the obvious one, right? Then they refer other people. And patients who get results tell people that organic referral pipeline is one of the most valuable things you can build as a provider. And I've seen it, and I can tell you RTM significantly improves the outcome rate, right? It does. We have data to support that. And then the patients come back, and the patients who trust you come back when they need PT again in the future. They tell their friends and family. They bring their neighbors, right? They write reviews. We've noticed a real uptake in our. You can go and look at our online reviews. We're over 1,500 now. Half of those are since when we started RTM. And they actually tell you, I love the video home program. I love that someone reaches out to me. I love I can send messages anytime, because they feel genuinely supported throughout the process, not just during the visits. And here's something you might not have really considered, right? Your PTs are going to feel better too, right? When patients are engaged, they're doing their exercises, they're progressing, your therapists feel effective, right? Their job satisfaction goes up, right? That matters right now, especially in a world where PT burnout is a real crisis. You know, RTM is one of the few things I've seen that genuinely, it's good for patients, it's good for therapists, it's good for the practice, right? You know, the bottom line, it improves the bottom line all at the same time. Simultaneously, this is all happening, right? And those three things don't usually line up, right? What's usually good for the practice oftentimes is not good for the patients and the providers. So I know what some of you are probably thinking, right? Well, my patients are older. They don't use apps. They can't use technology. This comes up constantly, and I understand that, right? But here's what I actually see, right? I see patients adopting, you know, the adoption rate is much higher than most practice owners would expect. We see a benchmark across all the practices we work with of 80% of Medicare patients that are eligible will be participating. Why? Because the app isn't a general fitness platform. It's or a portal with 17 tabs. It's their exercises that you created with instructions from you. And it has their progress. It's personal. It's simple, and it has one job, right? It's simple is the key, right? One of our patients, an older adult, she self-described as not good with technology, right? She used this app every single day for her entire program. And we could see that, and we were able to encourage her and give her a high five every time we saw her to reward her for her engagement. You know, and her exercises were all in there. It was hers, right? She gets to keep them forever. And you may have had a handful of patients who truly can't or won't engage digitally. That's fine, but RTM isn't right for every single patient. But I would say the majority, it's a great fit, right? It's a right fit for far more patients than you probably expect. And so again, it's a self-limiting belief that you have. You think it's not going to work. Well, you're never going to know till you try, right? Now, I started this video by saying I wasn't prepared for the patient feedback, right? It sounded negative. And I think that's actually the most important thing I can tell you about RTM. I expected a billing tool. I got a clinical upgrade that patients are genuinely grateful for, right? Now, if you want to talk through this, right, what this looks like in your practice, any other self-limiting beliefs that you might have, I'd be happy to talk through the workflow, you know, the inpatient engagement, the experience the patient has, what your team would need to do, what they would not need to do. Simple 15-minute call with me. You can book it right below this video. There's a link. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time.